Robert William Walton? Or do you already have that?
Nope, don't have.
12/7/40. And I don't remember that particular date, even though it was a year later that the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. As far as family goes, you know, our parents, we were blessed. Now you understand who's taking this video is my brother. We were blessed with the support that we had over the years. When we got in high school, we were a minority because we had an easygoing life. You know? But, grandparents, can't remember too much about them. Enjoyed going up to the McMillan farm. Always had fun up there. Just barely remember Grandma McMillan. And do you recall that she was such a frail little lady with some kind of a knob on her head? Mm-hmm. And up until that time, she was an enormous person. You know, I don't remember Grandpa McMillan. Grandma McMillan lived with Aunt Marjorie for a while.
Grandma Walton.
Grandma Walton. And she was hard of hearing. And we kids would come up behind her and say, "Boo!" You know. But I don't know. Nothing comes off the top of my head. I was expecting more like a question and answer interview here than.
So a little bit more about Mom and Dad. Anything that sticks out in particular?
Leo's patience is uncategorized. I mean, he put up with a bunch of stuff from a couple of us kids. You know. I'm just surprised that he was able to contain himself as well as he did. And, you know, I kind of felt sorry for the guy. He had all these kids. He got through the Depression. He had all these kids. He was a teacher. Now, teacher's pay isn't that great. And still, he was able to save up enough money so that when he retired, he and his wife could go traveling, and he bought that Airstream trailer, and he was all set to cover the nation. Unfortunately, my mother's health did not provide for that. And I think of Mom, Julia. It was so rare that you heard her complain, and she was doing all that housework. It's just amazing. Between the two of them, we didn't see any conflict. Rarely did we, except for the Volkswagen. And Leo said he was going to buy a Volkswagen, and Julia didn't like the idea. Leo went out and bought it anyway, and she wouldn't drive that machine until something happened where we had to go to a hospital for some reason or another, and she had to drive it. You know, but that was the only conflict I can remember.
Yeah, and she didn't talk to him for a long time after that.
I wonder, do you categorize that as a blessing? with a lot of couples, it is.
Yeah. You mentioned doing a lot of housework. I thought we did a lot of housework around there.
We just had portions.
Yeah.
And she did the majority of it. You know, I can remember her just how she had time to do that. And you remember, you go back when we were young, you know, you killed the chicken out in the backyard, and then you plucked it, and then you cleaned it out, and then you cut it up, and then you cooked it or whatever you do to a chicken. How did they have time? I suppose that's self-explanatory because you didn't have other things that had to be done. But yeah, and I was so surprised that I saw one of my relatives buy store-bought chicken ready to throw in the oven or to throw it. I said, "What's the matter with you? Why don't you? Something wrong here."
So I recall one of your major jobs was doing laundry, right?
I wonder how that was assigned. I don't remember, but
It must have been who likes to. Somebody's got to do this, and all of a sudden one maybe likes to do it.
it wasn't a matter of liking.
Yeah.
I was assigned,
Oh, okay.
and I can remember it would require 8 loads of laundry on a Saturday. Now that's putting it in the washing machine, taking it out and hanging it out to dry. No dryers. Hanging it on the clothesline.
You forgot about the wringer part.
I can't remember if there was a, if there was a evacuator there in the.
It was a rubber roller wringer.
Oh no, that's your story.
Oh.
No, I think the washing machine I was working on had a spin cycle on it,
Okay.
and then you take it out and hang it on the clothing. So that still holds true today for what I learned back then. It's a snap doing laundry, doing ironing. I've been on trips where I get an iron from the hotel or whatever, and they say, "What are you doing?" I say, "This is the way I want it," because I'm used to it.
Yeah.
But there were days where you had to do a certain amount of laundry. It was down there. It was already in the basement, and I'd be a little bit recalcitrant to do the laundry. And no, you don't go anywhere until you're done. I never did learn that lesson. Eventually I had to do the laundry, but it wasn't because I really wanted to. But the laundry wasn't as bad as the ironing. You remember we had a chest freezer?
Yeah.
And I was taught that this stuff that had to be ironed, you sprinkle it, and if you couldn't get at it right away, you roll it up and you put it in the freezer. Man, that freezer was full most of the time. But along with that, I do dress shirts, iron dress shirts. Now, I don't mind telling you that I could do 5 dress shirts inside of 20 minutes, and they'd come out right. Yeah, trying to beat that.
Yeah. I'm gonna close these windows because of that traffic. See if it makes any difference. Now when I got Cameron on the camera there and I have to go away and do something, he just makes faces at the camera all the time I'm gone. You don't have to do that.
Well, I did something similar.
Oh, okay.
But that's where editing comes in.
Yeah. Anything about siblings? Anything that stands out?
Yeah. My sister slung me through a basement door window. It cost 50 stitches up my arm. It was because one of us had a donut and the other one was looking for it. She grabbed my arm and just did a swing, and I had to stop myself going out that door. Siblings, I consider that over the years, I've had a lot of family support through some of my shenanigans. The worst of which were probably alcohol related, you know, and no recriminations, you know, just kind of easygoing. You don't stop and think about it at the time, but give it a couple years and say, wow, interesting.
Yeah. Getting into grade school, can you kind of run through the grade school? I suppose it's probably nun-centered, but
I think I started grade school because my birthday is in December. I think Julia got me in a little bit earlier. They had a cutoff date. I forget what it was, but I think she got me in, despite the fact that I should have started the next year. And I've often wondered, those years in grade school, there were so many times where, when it was our time to go to the bathroom, was like 20 minutes later than I wanted to go. And you didn't dare, you didn't dare get up. You know? But during grade school, it was so easy for me. No effort. All I had to do was listen to what they said. And I'm not sure I got A's, but I certainly got good grades. And then I went to high school, and although they deny it down at UD, those who take the entrance test, who score highest, are put in a particular grade. Now, they don't call it grade A, but that group is in together. And that was the group that I was assigned when my freshman year at UD High. One of my biggest regrets is I never tried. I just sat back figuring that I'm smart enough to pick up on, I can do this, I can do that. So the second year, all these smart guys in the freshman year included the guy who won a 4-year scholarship, 2 or 3 guys that won 3-year scholarships, 2 or 3 guys that won 2-year scholarships. Now, I didn't win a scholarship, but I was in that class. So the next year, I was dropped down a degree. Still didn't learn. Never did study. Never did study. I just thought I was too smart for the system.
okay.
And in the third year, I had an English teacher. He was a scholastic. That means he was a Jesuit in training. Tom, I can't remember his name. He was an English teacher. And he started out a class one day, and he's standing up in front of the class, and he's saying, okay, now I want everybody to be sure that anybody in here who isn't trying their best or giving their best isn't going to be passed. Isn't that right, Mr. Walton? What? Oh, yes, sir. He failed me at the end of the year because he knew what I was capable of, and I just wasn't doing anything about it. And unfortunately, that was a carryover to my chemistry class, where I probably should have studied a little bit. So I got a failing mark in that, and when you get 2 failing marks, 2 classes that you didn't pass, they say you can't make it up in summer school. Don't bother coming back. And all the sacrifices that Leo made to put us through high school, and it just frittered it away. That's, I don't feel good about that. But I went on to Highland Park Junior College. Oh, I had to finish up at Southfield High School, and I know that my parents. Well, did you know Dave? Dave was a year behind me at UD High. He flunked out the same year.
Okay. Oh, the same year.
Yeah, we got 2 letters on the same day from UD High. So we both finished up at Southfield High. That's no fun going to a new school for 1 year. All these people have all these relationships, and after Southfield High, I went to Highland Park Junior College. That was supposed to be an easy step before going to college. Without even trying, I was getting good grades down there. One teacher called me aside, and he must have looked at my records. He said, "This is a pretty good report card, Mr. Walton." I said, "Well, thank you, sir." I hadn't even tried, Then I tried a couple years at Wayne State. Still didn't know enough to go home and study. Geez, I regret that. I know it was there. We'll never know.
Yep.
We'll never know.
That's right.
I know it was there, but
After Highland Park?
a couple years at Wayne.
At Wayne. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I think it was while I was going to Wayne. I was working in the local hardware store, Everett Hardware, and there used to be a contractor come in. His name was Al DeTore, and I knew he was a bricklayer, but I didn't know what category of bricklaying. And I heard some of the guys in the neighborhood say, he does tunnel work. I said, yeah. He says, yeah, that's too hard for anybody. Shortly after I heard that from one of the guys in the neighborhood, Al DeTore comes in. I'm working in the hardware store, and he says, "How much do you get paid in here?" I said, "Why?" He said, "I'll triple whatever you're getting paid in here if you want to go to work." I said, And I thought about it. I took his offer for a job, and he was laying bricks. He was the owner of a company who was laying brick tunnels for sewers. So I show up at the job one night. He told me where to go. I'm still at school, so I'm going to school during the day, and this working the night. The afternoon should start at 4:00 or something like that. Tried that for a while. So much for school. I got into working in the tunnels, and I just enjoyed it. I'm not sure why. I just enjoyed it. And I remember I couldn't go to the bar with the guys when they finished up. There'd be you get finished around midnight or 1:00, and there was a 2:00 closing at the bars, so you could run to the bar and get some drinks after work. I wasn't old enough to do that until I did run into 21. Now I knew that I was better equipped to go to those bars than they were. I just wasn't old enough. But I just enjoyed the heck out of working in the tunnels. And a lot of folks wouldn't understand the working conditions. What they would do is they'd go into something had been mined out, okay? And what the bricklayers would do is go in and they'd have to do 2 or 3 layers of brick for strength. You know? A lot of times it was a 4-foot finish. Now, can you imagine what 4-foot finish is? Yeah.
From there to there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm looking at that camera. That camera's about 3 foot, so just another a little bit more. So you're working down there in a 4-foot finish. 5-foot finish, you had all the room in the world. You know, you couldn't stand up straight, but it was just normal activity. You had the miners come in, start out in the morning. They'd cut out the hole. Bricklayers would come in, fill it up, and they'd usually do maybe 25 or 30 feet a day. Very, very labor intensive. One afternoon, we show up on a job, and it was down in Wyandotte. And the bricklayers went down. They started putting their materials in. They said, whoa, wait. This is wrong. The roof boards hold the ceiling up. Big, thick oak, hardwood. You know, they'd put a bunch of them up there so that when they finished mining, they had some support there, let the bricklayers come through. Bricklayers looked at it and says, they put them in backwards. There's supposed to be an overlap so that once you're done here, you know, you can go to the next one. Well, what they did was they reversed the overlap. So you were constantly worried about what was going to go on down the line. So they had to call the miners back. Okay, now, is that clear? Mm-hmm. They called the miners back, and here comes the guy that headed the mining division. An old Italian guy, not too old, but old Italian guy. He had been home long enough to have his wine before dinner, which was fairly evident when he showed up. So he says, he went down and looked at it, and he came back up. And when I say went down and came in, they let you down in a bucket with a crane, you know, and you come back on. He said, I need 2 guys. I need 2 guys. Give me a hand down there. Everybody's looking around, you know. So it ended up, Danny Marlman and I went down. And we get down there, and because they already had material for the bricklayers down there, we had to crawl over bricks, stacked this high, and we're down 30 feet, and the roof is crumbling. Pieces of clay coming down, like chunks of clay coming down like that. And I wish I could remember this old Italian guy's name. He says, hey, he says, you don't worry. You don't worry. He says, I know what I'm doing. You just do what I tell you. So he started taking things apart, and then he says, you do this, you do this. Meantime, all these chunks of clay are coming down 30 feet down on the ground. Whoa. And I just figured, I know he doesn't want to die, so I'm safe. We got through it. That was an interesting experience.
Wow.
That was an interesting experience. Yeah. So with the tunnel work, I just happened to be in that period where there's a segue between all this labor-intensive brickwork they had been doing for years and years and years. They had gotten to a point where they had the hydraulic pumps ready. They just didn't have hoses that would hold all this tremendous pressure. And eventually they got into the steel webbing that in between the hose, this, that, and the other thing. So they got into jacking pipe where they could do some mining, get a section done, set a pipe down in the shaft, and push it to cover up right away. Mm-hmm. You know? And these guys are mining, and they still push, mining and push. So that signaled the end of brickwork, and this guy Al DeTore went into asphalt paving. He was in competition with some big companies, and how he survived as long as he did, I don't know. But I made the transition when he went from tunnels to, I mean, we're standing in our boots in hot asphalt, raking it, you know. He didn't own a paving machine. He was doing little jobs getting started. Didn't take long for me to get sick of that. In fact, one day I said, hey, I said, you know, I need some time. I said, I don't even have time to go get a haircut. You know, we were working long days, long nights. He says, okay. He was reluctant to do this, but he finally gave me a day off. Well, the day off, I hit the saloons, and I came to the conclusion that I had enough of asphalt business. An alternative to the brickwork and pushing pipe was to pour concrete. And what they would do, they would mine it out, and then they would come in with steel plates that were cut to a particular arc, and they'd bolt them together, and they would leave an adequate amount of room between these steel plates and the clay wall. They'd have a shaft where they pumped concrete down. Right. Now, before they did that, they'd have a guy go back there and put form oil. Form oil keeps the concrete from sticking to the steel. He would paint the plates once they were in place. And one night we were down there, and now there's only a certain amount of room, you know, and the guy would have to kind of squeeze in there and you know. Okay. So one night he's doing that, and he's going, kind of looking around. It got a little more demanding. What had happened was, one of the wires carrying electricity for the light bulbs has shorted out across these steel forms, and he's back there plastered against it. No, he didn't. No serious damage, but there was one guy. They'd use these cranes to lift material up and get it right. And they parked this crane under some overhead wires. Now, they should have known better to do that. The crane didn't go up and touch the wires, but it was close enough that it arced. And here's this guy with these big steel boxes that they used for material. He was just kind of guiding it. Here comes the electricity down through there, and it just plastered him right against the box. And fortunately, the operator saw what was going on, and he swung it away to get away from him. That guy, when the machine swung, he got dropped off that steel box. He got up and started running, and he told me later, he said, I don't remember any of it. He just got up and started running. Somebody had to run after him and catch up to him. Anyway, so with those stories, with those stories in mind, I'm happy that for all the stuff that we went through, and now I don't mind telling you this was hard work. This was hard work. All the things that we went through, I managed to get through all that stuff without ever getting hurt. Yeah. So, but that was an enjoyable part of my life. I enjoyed doing it. Sometimes would do tunnel work at night, and then get up and do brickwork during the day, where he would build catch basins and stuff. Some of those days, when I look back and I think about what I was getting paid, the guy I was working for was a little niggardly about his spending.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. So much for that.
So much for that. From there, where did you go?
I was on a little bit of a hiatus, and this guy from the neighborhood came over and he says, "Hey, you on a job?" And the guy's name was Hugh Carley, who happened to live next door at the time.
Happened to be.
I said, "Sure." I said, "I'm fast and I'm good." He says, "Okay, how much do you want?" No, that's not my department. Well, I wasn't fast. I was fast, but I wasn't good because I didn't understand business. Hugh had been in this business for years and years, and he knew shortcut here, shortcut there. As far as making money for himself went, and I was so liberal that make sure the job is done right. If it includes calling for extra material or whatever, Well, my idea of doing it was right came from Julia's idea of doing it right. Don't ever have to do it again. You know what I said. But I probably made some fairly decent mistakes working for Hugh, thinking that it should be done this way. If he wasn't there, which wasn't very often, if he wasn't there, see, I just didn't understand that you could do this and get away with it. Yeah.
No, I'm surprised that he was on the job as much as you just gave the indication.
Oh, when we started out,
Yeah.
that was full time.
For him to be on the job.
Oh yeah.
With shovel in hand, or?
You bet.
Oh.
Oh yeah. That started out. He used to play cards, and there was somebody in a group, a Friday night group perhaps, that told him that there was a job that was going to be started down in Dearborn Heights. Somebody had to provide drainage in the subdivisions, and here's what the setup was. So Hugh looked into that, put in a bid, and we went down. I had no idea, I just did what he told me, and if he wasn't there, whatever I decided to make up was wrong. Because it was going to cost too much money.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did well down in Dearborn Heights. That was his start,
Okay.
and then it just went from digging a 6-inch trench with a ditch witch, and putting a 4-inch pipe in there and covering it up with stone. Pretty simple. He worked it out so it was advantageous to him, and then he just went on to bigger and better things.
So what would be the bigger and better things? Just larger projects? Or?
It was called rear yard drainage, and this is back when Sterling Heights and Troy. I'm not sure that they were even a municipality. There's nothing out there. So as they built, they were putting in what they called rear yard drainage.
Okay.
And they used various pipe, various makes of pipe, various sizes, 6, 8-inch. It was just a matter of digging a trench, putting the pipe in, covering it with stone. and hooking it up to the already existing storm sewer system.
So what was the transition from Cal to Huey, from digging basements to this?
I don't know. I didn't have any part of that.
Oh, that was before your time?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
I know. I think Huey was 14 or 15 when he started in big time with Cal in the summertime, digging basements and putting in sewers.
Mhm.
I mean, I remember him telling me that he had jumped down 10 or 12 feet, throw the material down, and then jump down after it, put it together, and Cal's digging the ditch, for the sewers. And,
So it was just kind of the two of them?
I don't want to go that far.
Yeah, okay.
You know, but
So, I recall the Larson clay pipe being stacked up
yeah,
in there. Did you ever do any backyard drainage with that, or was that?
no, that was,
Strictly?
they were working in Royal Oak. Shortly after the war, I think it was.
Mhm.
They were working in Royal Oak. That's where they were using that clay pipe.
Okay.
And I remember Huey telling me that they would tunnel under roads by hand with a tile spade.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, I've done that. I've gone under sidewalks. That's difficult enough. But go under roads.
Wow.
And of course, by that time, you remember, certainly Larry was involved, Dick was involved, probably Mike,
Yeah.
even to the point where Jimmy and Chuck were involved.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you remember he went up Saginaw?
Yeah.
Did a lot of work up there.
Yeah.
He would get a little ahead of himself sometimes. And Chuck was telling me about they were working on a sewer, trying to get a sewer going up in the Saginaw area, whether it was Freeland or Midland or whatever. He said they were just having a hell of a time. You get into this wet sand, and the sand just keeps coming in. You can't. And they're working on it, and Larry's digging, and they're trying to get the pipe in, and Larry's digging, and Hugh pulls up on a job. You don't have that in yet? That's all Chuck needed. He came running out of that ditch. He had his shovel in his hand. Huey got in his car and went back to Detroit. No, that's the story I heard. Whether it actually happened or not, yeah.
So the next phase?
Well, geez, I only worked for Huey for, I don't know, 40 years.
Oh, okay.
He did go through a phase where he was tiling golf course greens.
Yeah.
The greens require a lot of maintenance. They require a certain amount of seed, they require a certain amount of subsurface, and they require a lot of drainage because they need to be watered heavily. And so what you do is you put the drainage in first.
And then where does it drain off to? Does it drain off?
Oh.
Because I don't ever recall seeing any kind of output from there. Is it
Well,
all underground?
You can dig a dry well. Which the dry well is it's just a hole that you throw a bunch of stones
Yeah.
in,
Yeah.
and you hope for evaporation and going out through there. He had a job at St. Clair Golf Course. Might be at St. Clair. I'm not sure I have that word right. But he was going to do they were remodeling the golf course, so he went out and he bought a new Ditch Witch tractor. And he consulted me and said, since you're going to be running this, he says, do you want an electric starter on it? I said, no, that's just one more thing to go wrong, just another maintenance thing. So standard flywheel with the pull rope.
Oh.
They had an anniversary of this guy retiring who was in charge of that, they had an anniversary 40 years later. Huey went to it. The ditch witch is still running. I don't think it's any secret anybody knows me.
Okay.
I've certainly had a lot to drink over the years, and I felt that I wasn't doing any damage. I enjoyed it, so I had a lot of it. It wasn't. I wasn't doing any wrong until this one day. A normal intake day. In fact, I was doing a favor for a buddy who couldn't mow his backyard because he was in a health problem. So I'd throw a lawnmower in the truck up in Birmingham, and I'd go over and mow his backyard and rake it up and take care of it. And I left Birmingham, and I stopped by Brady's Tavern in Beverly Hills because Jeannie was in there, who's the epitome of a person who can run a bar and handle it. So I stopped and said hello to her, and I got a hamburger to go and a celebratory Grand Marnier. No, I'm sorry. That's not. It wasn't Grand Marnier. It was it was Drambuie. I had a celebratory Drambuie. That's a throwback to when we'd be in Tom's. So I got in the truck in the parking lot, and I started out, and I said, I don't feel quite right. So at the time, they were doing some remodeling work at a couple of the stores in that complex, and there was a bunch of stuff stacked out there, contractor stuff, And I remember telling myself, why don't you just park the pickup out there? They'll think that it belongs there because of all the construction stuff, and take a little nap. A good citizen saw me doing my nap, thought she better call the police in case the guy's dead. All right, so I got a DUI and I wasn't even driving. And the funny thing is, I spent the night in a cell, and a guy came, woke me up in the cell, and he said, call somebody, have him get you out of here. I said, okay. So I called my brother Jack, and this was even before 8 o'clock in the morning. All right. So it wasn't until I got to court, and I'm talking to my attorney, and I said, I don't even know what I blew. They took a blood test, and that's what they used. The attorney looked at me and he said, it was 0.3. You know what the level here in Michigan is? 0.08. Well, the only reason I mention that is they were in a hurry to get me out of that cell. At 0.3, they should have held me for at least another day.
Okay.
So Jack picks me up. I go over to where they towed the truck.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, is that a ripoff? 2 days rental. It's because they took it in the day before, and here I am before noon. That constitutes 2 days, and pretty expensive, but they've got a captive audience. So I get the truck out, and I have to go back to, no. I get a release, and then Jack has to take me back to the police station. I show them the release, and then they gave me my papers. Now I go back to and I can get the pickup, So here I am out driving at 8:30 in the morning after nobody ever addressed that, because they didn't have the results. They didn't have the results from the blood test at that time.
Oh,
And I don't remember doing a breathalyzer, but they did ask me if I'd give them blood. I said, yeah, you know. So there were two guys there that were going to take it. There was one guy. He wraps his arms around mine so that I don't move, while the other guy puts a needle in. You know, I thought, what's wrong with you guys? You know, I'm not going to jump around. You want blood? Take it. Yeah. Yeah. You don't want to go through that. You don't want to go through that. It's expensive, time consuming, and they set it up so that you don't have a license, but you have to report in. You know, you have to go here, you have to go there. And on the one hand, yeah, if you can't handle yourself and driving drunk, you're gonna hurt somebody. Yeah. And there's no defense. I'm not going to try and defend myself. I do know one thing: you don't want to go through it twice. The prices go up.
Yeah.
Jail time.
Oh. What kind of jail time do they do for that sort of thing?
In Michigan now, they have what they call a super drunk drivers, super drunk law. I forget what the level is, maybe 2.2, 0.25, but that's super drunk, and they can send you to prison on that.
Even though there was no damage done, just that they've pulled you over.
Well, they assume that there's going to be damage.
Yeah, yeah.
A related story, it happened just a couple miles from here. Several years ago, there was a guy headed eastbound on 12 Mile Road, and he came over a little bit of a rise, and for some reason or another he was in the center lane doing about 70 miles an hour, rear-ended a lady who had two kids that was going to go into the dentist's office right there, drove that car into somebody who was waiting to make the same turn. I forget, it killed the mother and two kids, and I think it killed somebody else in the other car. That guy, 0.4.
Whoa.
You're supposed to be dead at 0.4. They never did find out where he had been drinking that morning, you know, but he had left whatever his workplace was. He had left and he was gone to visit somebody, but they never did find out.
Did he survive, or did he?
Yeah, he's in
survived.
prison. He's in prison. Can you imagine carrying that around with you day to day?
Yeah. So you've been working for Frank for how long now?
I have to define the word work.
Okay.
And I forget, I ran into Frank O'Brien, I think it was down at Tom's Tavern one night.
Mm-hmm.
I first met him like 40 years ago down at Tom's Tavern, but he hadn't been around mostly because he had a succession of drunk drivings and he couldn't be out driving and drinking.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, Brother Charlie did some investigation for him on his last charge of drunk driving.
Mm-hmm.
And because of Charlie's investigation, looking through this, that, and the other thing, it's amazing. You take something and you start breaking it down into particles, what you can come up with. And they finally dropped it down to reckless driving, perhaps. That one would have been the one to send him to prison. So he's very, very careful about drinking and driving. But I happened to see him down at Tom's, and he mentioned that he was going to Maine to buy an apartment building. And I said, I've never been to Maine. Can I go with you? And he says, yeah. So, he picked me up the next morning, 5 o'clock, drove through to Maine. on your way to Maine, I think you have to go through Delaware. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that, but there is the final exit on the interstate before you get into Maine. There is an exit devoted to a liquor store. Where you get discount liquor before you get into the state of Maine. So that's part of the trip to Maine.
Okay.
I was asking him, how did you come across this apartment building you go to? And these apartment buildings, it's interesting. You go into these what were old textile towns. Everything's 3 floors. Which isn't common to us, and they're jammed right next to each other. But why was he buying this one? Well, his sister had seen an ad in the paper, and she thought she might be interested, so he was going to buy it for his sister, so that she could have an income, retirement income. And I said, well, kind of like, did you look it over? He said, no, he says, I haven't seen it. I said, well, are we going to stop by? No, he says, we're going to the realty office. He walked in there, bought the apartment building. Now, when we left, all the papers are signed. We go to Home Depot, buy a paint sprayer, couple 5 gallons of paint, white. We go over to the apartment building, just go through the apartments, and he just sprayed everything white. Cupboards, this, that, and the other thing. Just everything got painted white. He went through that, and a lot of those contractor bags, anything left in there, you just pile it in the contractor bags, throw it in the dumpster. And so that was my
introduction.
Yeah. So the idea of when you say work, he does have a number of rental properties. Mostly it's drinking, gambling, and playing golf. That's the 4-letter word.
Okay. What about Tom of Tom's Tavern? How'd you meet him?
Harold was looking for a bartender. I said, okay, I'll bartend. How much do you want? I give him this price. Where'd you get that number? That was the monthly payment on the new car that I had at the time. I had more fun up at Harold's. At the time, he was doing real well, and I'd go in there in the afternoon and work, till closing time, on and on and on. I remember one night I'd lent Danny Marlman my car. He was working out at this Lincoln Mercury plant out 96. And he would get off work at 2:00, so there'd be a little overlap. I turned all the lights off. I'm sitting there waiting for Danny come back with the car, And here comes this guy. And he comes up to the back door, and I watch him walk across, and he's here early. So I open the back door. It's not Danny. I said, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" I said, "What's up?" My car broke down. I'm looking for a telephone. I said, "Oh, there's a phone right over there." I said, "You need change?" No, I'm convinced it was somebody who was going to break in that night. Yeah. I just happened to be sitting right there. Let's see. So working at Harold's, he and his buddies would take off on Wednesday. He'd have somebody fill in before noon. Okay. And then I'd get there, I'm not sure, probably 4:00 or I forget what time I started, but he and his buddies would come back, and they'd usually be, kind of floating. And what they would do is they'd go over to Windsor to watch the Windsor Ballet for a while, and then come back across. And one of the places they stopped would be Tom's Tavern, and I heard them talking about it. And they'd get a steak and a salad down there, and they were just glowing about this. Well, I thought I better look into this, you know. So I went down there one day, and I was sitting there, and Harold and his cronies come in, and they sit at the bar. Of course, Harold's buying me drinks, you know. Tom comes over to the table and he says, "Hey, what do you want?" I said, "Well, I heard you get a pretty good steak and salad. I'll try one of those." "How you want it?" "Medium rare." "Ah." So then Harold buys the steak, you know, and he and his buddies get up and leave, and then I'm finishing up a beer, and I'm sitting at the table, and Tom comes over and says, "You want something else?" I said, "Well, Tom, I came in to buy a steak and a salad, so I'm ready for another one." "Huh?" My first visit to Tom's, I had 2 steaks, 2 salads, and who knows how many beers. I remember walking in the back door at Tom's, the kitchen, and it was summertime, and he and this guy were pitching pennies against the wall, see how close he could come without hitting the wall. And I just happened to walk in to hear, "Okay, double or nothing for 500.
Pitching penny.
Pitching pennies. Tom was a gambler. One of his stories was, you go back to the right year. They used to play a card game named Barboot. At least that's how I understood him to say it. And he made a lot of money. And he went to the bank. He says, "I want this in gold." And the bank says, "Okay." He gave him gold. He walked out of the bank, walked down about a block, went into the next bank, and cashed it in, because you know how much gold weighs? He used to, Tom used to have a bunch of guys use his saloon for an office. He had a telephone mounted on a post, you know, payphone.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie Jones, Mike Ilitch, John Crowley. There's another one that I'm missing. But these guys used to do, when they were in college, they used to do home modernization, go around signing people up for home modernization. And that was their office, was Tom's Tavern. And then Mike Ilitch decided, he's had enough of this. He says, he looked around, and he was going to get into the pizza business, start making pizzas. He asked Tom if Tom wanted to get in on it. Well, that Mike Ilitch now owns the Detroit Red Wings, the Detroit Tigers. His wife owns Motor City Casino. You know, they're just barely making it.
Yeah.
They own the Fox Theater. They're going to build a new hockey program, arena down in Detroit.
You and Tom got to be pretty close, didn't you?
It wasn't what I thought it was. I used to spend a lot of time down there, you know, but from my point of view, we were buddy-buddy. From his point of view, he just had somebody hanging around, you know, kind of watch over things.
But you took a trip to Greece with him, didn't you?
So Tom's talking about retiring, going to Greece. He's not totally convinced, but he said, "What am I going to do with the bar?" I said, "Well, I'll tell you what. Once you lock the door, you go to Greece, I'll auction off the interior. Everything I can dismantle, whatever. I'll have an auction. I'll send you the proceeds. I don't remember getting any response out of that. Oh, here comes the day he's gonna fly to Greece. Well, he says, "Hey, you go to Greece with me." Cripes, I never thought of that. I give you $1,000, you go to Greece with me. I said, I'd be happy to go to Greece. I said, you don't have to give me $1,000. Yeah, I give you $1,000. So I take him down to the Greek guy that handles transportation. I think you know what the term I want, but so we park here and we have to walk 50, 100 feet to get to the office door. It took him 20 minutes because he'd take a couple steps and stop. Because he's thinking, you know, am I going to do this or not? Come on, come on. You know, take a couple steps and stop. Finally, we get into the office of the travel agent. They're talking Greek. So we get a date. Everybody says goodbye. You know, I remember Charlie drove us to the airport, and we got down. I'm going to say Middle Belt and Schoolcraft. Tom goes, "Oh no, we got to go back." What's the matter? I forgot my choppers. He left his false teeth on the bar.
On the bar.
Fortunately, we had like an hour's cushion. No, he just brought it down in about 15 minutes. But it was a big plane. I'm not sure it was a 747, but it was a big plane. Maybe 2 seats, 3 seats, and 2 seats. You know. So he gets up to go to the bathroom, and a few minutes later, I hear, "Hey, Bobby, Bobby!" Couldn't find his way. He didn't know where his seat was. He's in the aisle. He's looking around. So we go over, we land, go through customs or whatever it is. What's the proper term? Anyway, we're met by his family. It's a big deal. He and I stay at his sister's apartment, where I have my own bedroom. He's got his own bedroom, and you know, they don't speak English. I don't speak Greek. The morning that I got up, I walked into the kitchen. They're already sitting there and they're drinking coffee. And the brother-in-law says, "What do you want to drink?" Basically, you know, you could tell. Well, I didn't know how to say coffee in Greek, so I said, "Amstel." Amstel is a beer. Get something going here.
Yeah.
I stayed there maybe a couple weeks, and this was right on the edge of Athens. You call it Athens. The Greeks, for some reason, have a problem with hot water heaters. There's in the paper every day, a hot water heater exploded and it did this damage, it did that damage. You know. So what they would do is they'd turn on the hot water heater, which they had it sitting right above the bathroom. And I knew she was talking to him. When do you want to go take your bath? And then she'd go turn the hot water on. He'd go in and take his bath, and she'd turn the damn thing off. Now, I want to go in and take a bath. Don, it's no fun, cold baths. it just isn't.
Even if it's in Greece.
You can't hurry it up. You know what I mean? You can't do it fast enough. But there came a time where, okay, I've had enough of this. So I talked to one of his nephews who knew enough English to get by. And I said, can you do some translations for me? I said, I want to call the airline. It's time for me to go. I said, can you work this out for me? Never thinking, it occurred to me later that eventually it went through the family and got back to Tom. Now, I wasn't aware of that at the time. So what I had planned was, I had my clothes packed the night before when I got up. I was just going to sneak out of the apartment, get a cab, and go to the airport. Yeah. I'm very quiet. I just got to the front door. Hey, Bobby, where are you going? He's never been up this early before. You know. Oh, I'm going home, Tom. I'm going to the airport. I'm going to go home. Yeah. Yeah. Wait a minute, I'll go with you. No, you better stay here. No, I'm going with you. So here he comes. We go to the airport. Hey, Bobby. Yeah. I was supposed to claim this cash, and I didn't claim it. I said, yeah? Yeah. Takes this wad of money, and basically he split it in two. He says, here. What? I didn't claim anything either, you know? Man, I really didn't want to do that because both of us could have been put in jail.
Yes.
But no questions asked, you know. Yep. Got on a flight. Now we're headed home. And now I got the impression that he's ticked off because he's leaving Greece and going back to America. So he's banging on my ear. He you know what I did? I took a set of earphones, put them on, didn't listen to him for the rest of the flight home. That flight left Athens, stopped in Rome, and that was at the Rome when there was some terrorism in Rome. Ronald Reagan said, don't go to Greece, don't go to Rome. Don't fly into those. Yeah. And I want to tell you, I asked one merchant in Greek, in Athens. I said, well, what's your outlook? He said, send your money and stay home. Send the American money over, you guys stay home. Yeah. Just because Ronald Reagan said, don't fly to Greece. Yeah. His brother-in-law or his sister borrowed money from Tom some years back. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to make this number up. It doesn't matter. They borrowed $10,000. Okay. So after a certain amount of time, they replaced they converted it into drachmas, and after a certain amount of time, they had the same amount of drachmas, and they had it in an account, and they told Tom, come and get, we'll send you the drachmas, come and get it. He put it off and put it off. Now he starts thinking they owe me money. So he wants 10,000 US. They have 10,000 in drachmas. And the imbalance is like this. And they had a private meeting while we were there. He managed to have some of the in-laws get me off on the side, and we went over to a bar somewhere while they're working this out. Each was adamant. You had a chance. It was offered here. Now you want this. And I don't know whether they got a resolution or not. But it's an interesting, you start messing around with the foreign currency. you better know what you're doing.
Yep.
Yeah. Before I went to Greece with Tom, a girlfriend of mine and I went over to Greece for a couple of weeks. Made sure she had a passport. So when do you want to go? You know, bam, bam, bam. And the two of us stopped in a little town called Turkolimenos. Turkolimenos is probably the only leftover reference to Turkey in Greece because of the enmity for years and years and years. This little place called Turkolimenos is on a bay, and the bay is just one restaurant after another. They're all good. They're all good. But I happened to go into one place that had some particular stuff that I liked, and I remember on the ride home from being there with the girlfriend, I said, you know, before I die, I'm going to go back to Turkolimenos. So we went over with Tom. We were out with one of his relatives, and I said, can you take us to Turkolimenos? Boom. We go to the place that I liked. You know, a bunch of, it would be like Tasta hopping in Spain. Different stuff at the store.
Yeah. So how long after that trip did Tom die?
I'm not good at putting those years together.
Long time, short time?
Oh, it'd be a short time.
Short time.
Yeah. Mike Illich paid for the funeral, paid for the casket.
You want to do a quick summary of the reunion you just went through?
Along January or February, I don't know what prompted it. I thought, why don't we have a get together? For the kids in the neighborhood, back when we were in grade school, early high school, there were a bunch of kids who had an uncommon friendliness for the number of kids, and everybody was friendly. Don Valini sponsored a get together. At some point, I can give you the year, but I don't have it with me. And we had a blast just seeing each other, you know. Now, why it occurred to me this year, I don't remember, but my preliminary foray was I checked with Bill Walsh up in Pellston. I said, what do you think of the idea? He says, I'm all for it. You know, this is email.
Yeah.
And my original idea was, because there were a fair number of the people that either lived up in that area, Sheboygan, Indian River, Pellston, a couple other joints up there. Add to that, Valenti's have cottages up at Glen Lake. I just thought, you know, why don't we do it up in that area? And of course, you throw in the mix that part of the the community when we were kids is we'd meet at Walsh's house. We're down there all the time. Joe and Julie, just an open door. Come on in, you know. Yeah. So why don't we just do it with Bill and Julie up there? So, my first idea was not to put pressure on anybody. I was thinking we could get a county park, find something that had a shed in it, you know, and you'd have outhouses or whatever. You know. And I was trying to push that around. Finally, Julie Walsh Rivers says, well, we got a town hall. Maybe you could rent that. And she was a little bit late, and she says, but it'll cost you $150. And I said, $150? Well worth it, you know. So it was just a matter of, once I got a little bit of agreement, then I started reaching out, and everybody I contacted said, yeah, good idea.
Mm-hmm.
The town hall that we eventually met in, great place.
Mm-hmm.
There were only 3 or 4 that didn't show that were on the invitee list, and they had their own reasons.
Ron and Nancy from Florida, were they the longest travelers, or were there a couple long travelers?
Florida. Phil Davidson and his wife Bev were scheduled to be there coming up from Arkansas. In fact, I talked to him maybe 3 weeks before we were supposed to meet. He said, yeah, we'll be there. I mean, I talked to him on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
He says, yeah. He says, I'm into rebuilding cars. He said, I just rebuilt a 55 Chevy. He says, I'm going to drive it up. And I said, oh, you're going to be in the neighborhood. I said, you're going to catch the Woodward Cruise? Is that what they call it?
Dream Cruise.
Dream Cruise. And he says, well, we're going to be in Waterford. And I said, oh, you got to see the Dream. Oh, he says, I've been there. But we didn't see him.
Oh.
I didn't.
Carol Ruhlman was married
To Harvey Davidson.
to Harvey.
Yeah. Harvey died heart attack years and years ago. I talked to Carol on the phone to extend the invitation. She said, oh, Bob, I won't make that trip.
Where is she?
Arkansas.
Oh.
And she refers to her brother as Beaver. I got a kick out of that. I mean, that was just so natural. You're calling him Beaver.
Uh-huh.
How many of us call him Joe anymore? Joe Ruhlman. He was talking to Cal one time, and Joe said something like, who's that over there? And Cal says, oh, that's Moses. Just because I was wearing a beard, And back then it was red.
Yeah.
Beaver's called me Moses ever since. Now, you know how long it's been since Cal died.
Yeah. How did that trip come about?
That was a friend of Ron Gurgent's, owns property down there.
And,
He does a lot of business.
and
Outside, you have to leave Chihuahua, the city of Chihuahua, in the state of Chihuahua.
mm-hmm.
You go west. I don't know. It's a 4 or 6 hour train ride, and I can't remember the name of the town. Copper Canyon is you stop in Copper Canyon, and then you go another hour or 2 west. There's a little town. We got out there, and then you take a jitney way up here. You get into a crossroads downtown, and from there they had some jeeps that took us out of that area back into the boondocks, and then that's where you met the horses and the mules and the donkeys, and off you go.
Oh.
It's interesting. It was a fun trip. When we finished that trip to the Sierra Madre, this guy says, I've been doing this for years. He said, I'd put you in the top 10 of hikers.
Really?
Yeah. I was the only one who stayed on foot, going up through the mountains and then coming down the other side and going to the camp, spending a couple of days there, and then hiking back. Everybody took turns on the mules, donkeys, horses. You know. I was the only one that made the whole trek. Even these guys that were experienced.
Oh, even that.
Yeah. And I'll tell you why. I was more concerned. I know this sounds self-serving, but I was more concerned about one of the guys I was with, who I knew had a foot problem, and one of the gals that I was with, who had put on new shoes for this hiking, blisters all over the place, and I tried to get them to share the saddle on one of the animals. But I can still remember, you know, you're going up a steep grade and you're looking down at where you're in. The path is this wide, and I see half a hoof print. I say, watch out, Bob.
But so this guy classifies you as a first-class hiker, but you've never really done much hiking? It's never occurred to you, huh?
You know, I walked home from Tom's Tavern one night, but
I don't think that was...
no, I think that was all centered on stamina.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yep.
Okay.
The Tarahumara Indians. Now, I'm not sure I have that right. Tarahumara Indians, but that was the tribe. They're not too well known. They're not out in civilization, but they are known for running, and they run barefoot. And there's a book out, has to do with their running, and it debunks all of these shoes made by Nike, Reebok, etc., etc. You know, they say this is the greatest thing. It's not. It does more damage to your feet. But then, how many are runners? All you're doing is walking to the store and back, you know, or walking around the mall.
Yeah.
But it debunks this idea of this is a perfect running shoe. It's not. Your foot is. And I'm happy to report that in that visit, I mean, this is back in nowhere. You had to be careful that you didn't go into some place where they were growing marijuana or you know, get into the bad guys. So these Indians knew where to go and when to get there. Somebody was foresighted enough to bring some tequila into the camp, and I'm happy to report that I discovered, I don't remember ever drinking tequila before having been there, but I'm happy to report that tequila goes good with orange juice, tequila goes good with coffee, tequila goes good with tequila. We'd get together with the group and some of the Indian sponsors. They'd build a little campfire out in this open space, and we'd sit around there, and there'd be a couple of jugs of tequila, and they just passed it around. I mean, everybody drank out of the bottle.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I didn't have any problem with that. I think the tequila was taking care of the. Yeah, that was entertaining and instructive, and that was a fun trip.
Yeah. And the purpose of the trip was
Just
to take a trip.
that's it.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay.
This guy owns what used to be a rancho, and because the railroad came in later, that transferred transferred stuff where the rancho would be the main spot, Now it's just collateral.
Yeah.
All the action's over here where the train track is.
Okay.
I think Ray and Maggie took their big old RV, $500,000 RV. I think they took that down to Copper Canyon, and what they do is they put it on a flatbed railroad car, and they hire security because of the bad guys down in Mexico. If you think of it, we'll ask Maggie about that later today.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure they took their RV down, and I saw a bunch of them down there. And here's these security guys, they got automatics.
Yeah.
Everybody's wearing a hip holster.
Mm-hmm.
This Copper Canyon, they say, puts the Grand Canyon to shame.
Really?
You've never heard that?
Uh-huh.
Do some research on that.
Okay.
I haven't researched it, but I've heard it enough that I'll believe what they said.
But you didn't see the Copper Canyon.
You get to stop. You get to stand at a rail, and you get to look down a canyon.
Okay.
That's all you see from the train stop. And of course, they got little Indian kids there selling this and selling that. Yeah, that was a good trip.
Good.
I was concerned about Brother Charlie. Charlie went into a downspin, and it really bothered me because you could graph it. Month to month, you could graph it. And he even said, I want to make sure somebody tells my grandkids this isn't what Grandpa always was. Boy, oh boy, that was quick. And once he got to the point where you couldn't keep him in a house anymore because any door was something that he had to get out of. And of course, that gives you an idea of the mental state. Once you're in one of those compounds, they just have to fill you up with drugs so that we'll stop and think. If everything that occurs to your mind is brand new, you don't know how to react to it, so you're going to be defensive. That's why so many people get into Alzheimer's, resort to weapons. Are you familiar with that?
No.
That's protect themselves because they're defensive. They don't know what's going on. His demise really struck me. That was something. You talk about winding this up. Over the next few days, I will have created 4 hours worth of interview that I wish I had said.
You gotta go through it once.